Prologue. Demandred receives a message from the Dark Lord encouraging him to continue his plans against Rand. Elaine assumes her Aes Sedai duties and discusses her feelings for Rand with Min. Gawain vows revenge on Rand after hearing rumors about his mother's death. Morgase seeks White Cloak support from Pedron Nile to reclaim her throne, troubled by her reliance on Talonvor and the White Cloaks. Savannah continues plotting to capture Rand. Demandred meets with Missana, Semerhage, and Grendel, revealing a cryptic message from the Dark Lord. Let the Lord of Chaos rule, while Osangar and Arangar face an unsettling situation orchestrated by Shaidar Haran. In Chapter 1, Rand al'Thor trains with practice swords in the royal palace of Kemlin. Despite sustaining a head injury, he defeats 5 opponents and orders payment for those who struck him. Davram Basheri questions Rand's training and tests him with a mock dagger attack, which Rand easily stops using the one power. Bashir expresses concern over Rand's need for Aes Sedai support, hinting at political challenges. Rand contemplates his distrust of Aes Sedai and growing internal struggles. The chapter ends with a report that Mazrim Taim, a former false dragon, has arrived at the gates. In Chapter 2, Rand confronts Mazrim Taim, a former false dragon known for his destructive past in Saldea. Despite his notorious reputation, Taim submits to Rand's authority, seeking an alliance. Rand questions Taim about channeling and confirms he can teach, marking the start of an uneasy partnership. Taim presents Rand with a Quendeler seal, crucial for containing the Dark One, revealing its origin from an old farmer in Saldaya who believed Taim to be the dragon reborn. While Rand grapples with Luz Theron's voice urging him to break the seal, he resolves to protect it and prepare for the last battle. In Chapter 3, Rand uses Seidan to create a gateway, bringing himself and Taim to a clearing where they meet Enila and the Maidens. They discuss threats from the Forsaken and Shadowspawn before arriving at a farmyard for Taim to test potential channelers. Rand urges Taim to begin testing, and Damer passes successfully. Rand plans to return the next day, struggling with trust issues and guilt. He emphasizes the need for training new channelers as weapons against their many enemies, including the Forsaken. As Rand grapples with his emotions, he resolves to defeat the Dark One and cleanse Seidan despite the challenges ahead. In Chapter 4, Rand arrives at a camp filled with soldiers from Ter and Carrion, accompanied by Ael, including Royden and his Thunderwalkers. Tensions escalate when High Lord Wyramon confronts Rand about missing nobles, exposing a conspiracy against him. Rand declares treason and plans to issue arrest warrants for the conspirators, prioritizing gathering forces over immediate attacks. Meanwhile, he engages in light-hearted conversations with the Aiel, avoiding serious discussions about war. Later, Rand returns to his quarters, where he finds Avienda asleep. Despite his discomfort around her, he feels a sense of contentment as he prepares for the challenges ahead. In Chapter 5, Matt takes a break at the Golden Stag Inn, dancing with Betsy while reflecting on his leadership burdens. Rumors of the Lord Dragon in Marone trouble him as he navigates a bustling town filled with soldiers and refugees. After helping an orphaned boy, Ulver, Matt resolves to care for him. He learns of a nearby seafolk ship, but arrives too late as it departs. As Matt leads the band of the Red Hand from Marone, he emphasizes unity among his troops and aims to cover 35 miles daily, hoping to surprise their enemies in upcoming battles. In Chapter 6, Samael arrives at Grandel's palace, wary of her manipulations. They discuss Rand al'Thor's threat, which Samael underestimates, while Grendel expresses her concerns about mortality and their precarious positions. Samael warns Demandred of his independence and the importance of maintaining his plans. Grendel contemplates her strategies and the dynamics among the Chosen, planning to eliminate Rand. Meanwhile, she reflects on the unusual nature of Shaidar Haran and the vanished Chosen, including Lanfear and Asmodean. Grendel acknowledges the Great Lord's power over them and considers the implications of their uneasy alliances while observing a patient's grim fate. In Chapter 7, Elaine focuses on creating Terangriel in Saladar while awaiting news on Egwene. She and Nynaeve meet with Siouan and Leonie to discuss tensions with the Ael Wise Ones and the Aes Sedai's concerns about Rand and Egwene. They enter Tel'aran'rhiod and encounter a dream of Elida, who aims to reunite the White Tower. Elaine learns of disturbing rumors and the threat from the White Cloaks. They face a nightmare where Trollocs capture Aes Sedai, prompting Elaine to rally her friends to dispel it and escape before returning to Saladar. In Chapter 8, Nynaeve wakes up anxious about the weather, frustrated with her search for Lean and her concerns for Lan. In the streets, she witnesses Loghain impressing Alteran nobles, who start to question their loyalties. Nynaeve confronts Siuan and Gareth Bryan about their responsibilities, but Siuan remains independent. Nynaeve struggles with her healing abilities and considers leaving Saladar. She has a tense encounter with Moghedien, pushing her to teach a lesson on detecting male channeling. Elaine informs Nynaeve of an emissary from Elaida, prompting concern about the Tower's awareness of their activities and future decisions. In Chapter 9, Lord Captain Commander Pedron Nile discusses the quarantine of Terabon and the usefulness of the Illuminators as spies with Omerna, who reports on Dragonsworn activity and Matan Stepaneos' potential support. Nile hears of chaos in the south and unusual sea folk movements, leading him to consider the divisions within the Aes Sedai and devise a strategy to manipulate perceptions of them while seeking Elaine Trakand and Gawain's capture. Meanwhile, Morgase feels trapped and reflects on her son Galad's alignment with the Children of the Light, noting the influx of refugees from the Prophet and their belief in a false dragon. In Chapter 10, Rand, along with Sulin, 20 maidens, Bael, and Bashir, confronts growing unrest in the Borderlands and Kemlin, including violence against those doubting his identity as the Dragon Reborn. Bashir informs Rand of a man hanged for mocking him. As Rand rides through Kemlin, he meets familiar faces, including Mat's sister, Bode. He learns 2 Aes Sedai have arrived and feels the need for their support. Rand is then bonded as a warder by Alana, causing confusion and anger. In a moment of frustration, he unintentionally terrifies the Two Rivers girls, realizing the burden of his identity. In Chapter 11, Varen contemplates Rand's escalating power and the deaths of Siuan and Moiraine, fearing Rand's madness. Meanwhile, a group of young women panics after encountering him, and Alana uses her authority to restore order. Varen and Alana discuss Rand's strength and the potential rebel factions in the tower. Rand races to the palace, feeling Alana's presence in his mind, and eventually travels to a nearby farm. There he observes Time training young men to channel, insisting they must be prepared to defend themselves. Rand decides to let Time recruit more men, realizing he needs an army against impending threats. In Chapter 12, Nynaeve and Elaine try to gather intelligence on Elaida but face eavesdropping wards in the Little Tower. Tension escalates in Saladar with Tarna's arrival. Moghedien suggests approaching Rand in Kemlin, alarming Nynaeve, who discusses plans with Brigitte. Nynaeve is summoned by Nicola to meet with Yanya and Delana, increasing her anxiety. While sneaking around, Nynaeve overhears a discussion among Aes Sedai about Elaida's orders and the need for careful planning. They contemplate the implications of their actions regarding Rand and a mysterious biddable child. The chapter ends with Theodrin planning a more direct approach to help Nynaeve. In Chapter 13, Nynaeve learns to channel the One Power without anger, realizing her emotions are a hindrance. Elaine expresses concerns about their safety and the Aes Sedai's intentions regarding Rand al'Thor. Tarna Fair arrives, indicating the Amyrlin seat's interest in Nynaeve and Rand, increasing pressure on Nynaeve. They decide to remain in Saladar to persuade the Hall against supporting Elaida. Later, while linked in Tel Arenarhyd, they discover a crystal bowl that may control weather, potentially affecting Rand. Nynaeve resolves to travel to Abu Dar for further searches, contemplating the need to take action soon. In Chapter 14, Egwene enters Tel Arenarhyd, intrigued by Nynaeve and Elaine. She reflects on her frustrations with the Wise Ones and navigates the dream world, recognizing familiar figures, including Rand and Berylin. She finds herself chained in Gawain's dream, where he expresses his feelings for her, deepening their connection. Meanwhile, Nynaeve, disturbed by screams in Saladar, gathers her strength as chaos ensues due to a bubble of evil. She and Elaine assist others, while Anaya coordinates the response. Despite feeling useless, Nynaeve eventually links with Anaya, discovering a sense of unity, even as chaos reigns around them. In Chapter 15, Egwene wakes in her tent, contemplating her status as accepted and deciding to rest instead of joining breakfast. Aiel women, Amys, Melaine, and Bear, discuss Egwene's well-being and their dissatisfaction with Aes Sedai meetings. Elaine expresses concern for Gareth, while Siuan reveals news of a false Aes Sedai claiming allegiance to an Aja. Elaine and Nynaeve insist on leading the search for a powerful ter'angreal in Abudar, despite Aes Sedai doubts. Fa'lan reprimands Elaine and Nynaeve for their laziness and forces them to work in the kitchens. Sheriam observes them with concern about their future actions. In Chapter 16, Rand sits on the dragon throne, anxious for Alana's arrival. He meets 4 Andoran nobles who express skepticism about his authority after Morghessa's death. Lady Dylan agrees to support Rand only if Elaine is crowned queen, but Rand insists he does not want to rule. Dylan reveals a resemblance between Rand and the long-lost Tigraine, which unsettles him. Meanwhile, Bashir brings news of a messenger from Samael proposing a truce. Rand, enraged, rejects the offer and orders the messenger killed. Afterward, he decides to leave for Cairhien, seeking distance from Alana and the nobles' scrutiny. In Chapter 17, Rand gathers his sword and scepter, opening a gateway to the royal palace of Cairhien with Sulin and Urien. He meets Corman and Havian, requesting to see Berelain and Roark to discuss governing challenges in Cairhien. Rand decides to support Berelain's decisions despite the tensions among the nobility. Roark informs him that the Shaido are building holds and don't plan to return to the Threefold Land. Rand learns of fighting in Shara, raising concerns about the world's unrest due to his presence. Later, Manjin reveals he killed a man for wearing a clan chief's tattoo, prompting Rand to confront the implications of murder and honor. In Chapter 18, Rand confronts Roark and Berelain, ordering Manjin's execution before heading to the school, where he meets Idrian Tarson and discusses supporting promising projects. He consults Haradfell about the Aes Sedai and the Warder Bond, revealing his desire for knowledge. They explore the Dark One's prison and the seals. Meanwhile, Egwene wanders the Sun Palace, feeling out of place. She seeks Rand's help with the Wise Ones, but hesitates to disclose information about Saladar. Despite their tension, Egwene realizes Rand needs her, hinting at a deeper connection between them as Rand prepares to meet various Carheenan nobles. In Chapter 19, Rand is tormented by dreams linked to Luz Therin, causing unease before a meeting with Ael and Carheenan nobles. He learns he must witness Manjin's execution, which he wishes to avoid, and decides to return to Kemlin. Aviendha shares that the Wise Ones have had troubling dreams about Rand, hinting at dire consequences related to a man with a dagger and the search for the bowl. Their conversation reveals deep emotional ties and obligations, leaving both conflicted. Aviendha struggles with her feelings for Rand and societal expectations, ultimately seeking a way to reconcile her loyalties. In Chapter 20, Rand meets Bari, who informs him that 3 Ogier, Haemon, Covril, and Aerith, are seeking news of Loial, who has been away from their steading for over 5 years. Rand reassures them that Loial is safe in the 2 rivers. The Ogier express urgency to find him due to dangers outside their steading. Rand requests maps to locate the waygates, discussing how cities and steading have changed over time. He learns of the sad history of steading lost to the Blight and abandoned due to dwindling Ogier numbers. Haemon reveals a waygate in Shadar Logoth, which Rand wants to visit. In Chapter 21, Rand, Covril, Aerith, and Haemon plan their route to Shadar Logoth, with Rand insisting on using traveling to save time. Despite Haemon's initial concerns for Aerith's safety, they proceed. Upon arrival, Rand warns the Aiel to avoid touching anything. When Leah goes missing, Rand's frustration mounts and he orders a search in pairs. Despite searching and calling for her, they find no trace. As night approaches, Rand reluctantly decides they must leave, fearing for their safety. He opens a gateway to the 2 rivers, instructing the Ogier to keep quiet about his presence, and then opens another gateway to Kemlin, filled with grief for Leah. In Chapter 22, Mat leads his men toward Tyr while reflecting on his friends and the worrying Aes Sedai activity. He learns from Chel Vanine about a slaughtered Tinker caravan, prompting him to order a burial in camp nearby, disturbed by the violence. That night, Mat encounters Aiel sneaking into his tent. He alerts his men, leading to a skirmish in which several Aiel and members of the band are killed. Mat is wounded but survives, realizing Aiel were sent to kill him. He decides to build a ditch and palisade around the camp for safety, and recruits Ulver to help him. In Chapter 23, Grandal enters Samael's lavish chamber, where they discuss recent events. Samael boasts about finding a cache of Angreal, and reveals he received a favorable response from Rand al'Thor regarding a truce, despite Grandal's skepticism. Samael dismisses the deaths of Aiel maidens, insisting al'Thor won't retaliate. Grandal worries about the fate of other chosen, but Samael seems unfazed, claiming to know their whereabouts. He demands Grendel find Demandred and Semirhage, warning her that her safety depends on it. After she leaves, Samael contemplates manipulating Grendel to secure his position on the day of return. In Chapter 24, Egwene returns to the bustling city, feeling nostalgic but concerned about rumors of Aes Sedai divisions and Trollocs nearby. Spotting Aes Sedai, including a Red Sister, heading to the royal palace, she worries about their intentions toward Rand. After reporting to the Wise Ones, she advises Berelain to be cautious. Despite her excitement, Egwene undergoes tests of her health, demonstrating her resilience to the Aiel. Once confirmed healthy, she enjoys the relaxation of a sweat tent, but leaves when clan chiefs arrive. Exhausted, she prepares for sleep, dreaming mostly of Gawain. In Chapter 25, Egwene is eager to investigate the Aes Sedai embassy after discussing it with the Wise Ones. She eavesdrops on gossip at Lady Erlin's palace, but finds it unhelpful. Outside, she meets Gawain, who commands guards, escorting Rand to Tar-Valon. They confess their feelings for each other, and Egwene asks Gawain to refrain from harming Rand until she can prove his innocence regarding Gawain's mother's death. Gawain agrees, and offers to leave everything behind to be with her. Egwene later observes strong flows of Saidar coming from the mansion, prompting her to question the Aes Sedai's intentions. Meanwhile, discussions among Aes Sedai reveal suspicions about Moiraine's survival and involvement, which could threaten their plans concerning Rand. In Chapter 26, Rand waits atop a hill, anxious about Alana's condition and his connection to Lews Therin. While riding back to Kemlin, he narrowly escapes an assassination attempt leading to Desora's death as she saves him. After capturing suspects, Rand grapples with grief before returning to the palace, where he converses with Elenia about Andoran history and bloodlines. He learns that all noble houses are connected to Ashara, but their relationships are complex. Overwhelmed by thoughts of his mother's lineage and feeling disconnected, Rand resolves to go to Caerleon, instructing Nandera and Caldon to assemble their people without informing Aviendha. In Chapter 27, Egwene meets with Gawain, who warns her that Aes Sedai from the tower are searching for her. She attends a Wise Ones gathering about the Kara Karn, then confronts Rand about the dangers of Elyda's Aes Sedai. They share a moment before Rand weaves Saden to make her invisible for protection. After a tense encounter, Egwene accuses Rand of playing games and questions his intentions regarding the Aes Sedai. Meanwhile, Nasune and her companions speculate about Rand's abilities and the mysterious sister they encountered, contemplating strategies to control the situation surrounding him. In Chapter 28, Rand al'Thor wrestles with Lews Therin's influence, leading to erratic behavior. After waking from disturbing dreams, he learns of nobles arriving in Kemlin and receives a letter from Alejandra Maritha, indicating complex political matters ahead. Suddenly, a gray man attempts to assassinate him, but Rand quickly neutralizes the threat, though he feels disturbed by Lews Therin's violent urges. Time informs Rand about a new student, Jahar Narishma, who possesses potential abilities. Determined to manage the incident discreetly, Rand resolves to fulfill his responsibilities while grappling with his own chaotic thoughts. In Chapter 29, Nynaeve, overwhelmed by her chores, enters the Little Tower and finds a serious atmosphere. She learns that Siuan and Lian are occupied, and Brendas questions her studies, further frustrating her. Tom and Julin return with news that Elaine's mother may be in the Fortress of the Light, which stirs Elaine's emotions. Nynaeve proposes leaving for Ebudar, but Elaine refuses, citing their promise to stay. Nynaeve decides to visit Loghain for healing, where she discovers an emptiness in him. She manages to heal him and quickly instructs Elaine to inform Sheriam of her success. In Chapter 30, Nynaeve struggles to maintain her shield on Loghain while Elaine leaves, fearing their actions' consequences. A group of Aes Sedai questions Nynaeve's healing of Loghain and demands proof. Frustrated by their skepticism, Nynaeve successfully channels to heal Siuan, but receives criticism instead of praise. Elaine apologizes for revealing their plans, while Nynaeve resolves to leave before the Aes Sedai can exert control over her. Siuan and Lian visit, discussing the ongoing struggle against Logan and urging Nynaeve to try healing again. The chapter concludes with Nynaeve overwhelmed by the Yellow Sisters' attention. In Chapter 31, Aemon Valda arrives at the Fortress of the Light, learning from Dane Bornhald about Morgase's presence and her potential alliance with the children. Valda plans to manipulate Morgase for his gain. Niall, observing Valda's frustrations, sends a courier to Tanshiko regarding troubling news from Taraban. Morgase prepares to escape with Paiter Barshaw when she is summoned by Inquisitor Ainur Saren to see Nile. During the journey, Morgase witnesses the hanging of prisoners, including Paiter, realizing her escape plan has failed. Despite her fears, she decides to sign Nile's treaty to save Andor, though it comes at a great cost. In Chapter 32, Egwene senses rising tension in Carrion following Rand's visit and the presence of the Shaido Wise Ones, especially Savannah. After 3 maidens are punished for entering Erlin's palace, Egwene seeks knowledge from the sea folk but is attacked by a windfinder, causing her to fall into the river. Realizing she has channeled in public, she returns to her tent feeling exposed. In a dream, she meets Aes Sedai who summon her to the hall of the Tower for judgment. Despite her fears, she agrees to go to Saladar, determined to avoid humiliating her Aiel mentors. Meanwhile, Rand reflects on Egwene's acceptance of the summons and opens a gateway to Kemlin. In Chapter 33, Egwene prepares to leave and writes a note to Gawain confessing her love. Amys, Bear, and Sorelia express disappointment in her decision to enter Tel'aran'rhiod. Egwene admits to lying about her status as an accepted and seeks their help. Mat plays a game with Oliver before Rand arrives, urgently needing Mat to escort Elaine to Kemlin, discussing Aes Sedai and Saladar and their journey's dangers. Egwene confronts her shame over her recent trials and gathers courage. She vows to face the Aes Sedai without surrender, determined to navigate her challenges with newfound strength. In Chapter 34, Egwene prepares for her journey to Saladar, packing her belongings and contemplating the challenges ahead. She channels Saidar to create a connection to Tel'aran'rhiod, stepping through her weave with the intent to travel quickly. Reuniting with a dream version of her horse, Bella, she rides through the landscape, marveling at the speed of travel. As she reaches the village near Saladar, she dismounts and steps back into the waking world, seeking Sheriam. Upon arrival, Egwene is unexpectedly welcomed by several Aes Sedai, who inform her that she is to be the next Amyrlin seat. In Chapter 35, Egwene confronts her unexpected elevation to the Amyrlin seat. Surrounded by Aes Sedai, she struggles to grasp the reality of the situation, insisting she is unprepared. Sheriam and Baonin clarify that the Amyrlin does not have to be Aes Sedai, and the Hall will make the decision. After a flurry of activity, Egwene is summoned before the sitters. Following ceremonial questions, she asserts her willingness to serve as Amyrlin. Despite initial reluctance, unanimous acceptance occurs. Egwene finally assumes the title, sealing her role in the White Tower amidst her doubts and the weight of her new responsibilities. In Chapter 36, Egwene awakens as the new Amyrlin seat and learns that Gareth Bryne is building an army while embassies seek support. Conflicted Aes Sedai advice troubles her as she begins her first official day. She announces Elida's removal and raises Nynaeve and Elaine to Aes Sedai status, causing concern among the sitters. The 3 women discuss their discoveries, including a ter'angreal bowl that could change the weather located in Ebudar. Egwene vows to send them on a mission to retrieve it, recognizing the need for her friend's support in navigating her new role. In Chapter 37, Egwene learns that Nynaeve has captured Moghedien with a secret Atum. Elaine insists on keeping Moghedien alive for her knowledge, and Egwene asserts her authority over her. Egwene aims to broaden Aes Sedai training to all women who can channel. Siouan arrives to support Egwene as Amyrlin, discussing strategies to motivate the Hall. Meanwhile, Romanda and Lelaine plot to counter Sheriam's influence, fearing her rise to power. Delana struggles with her alliance with Halima, who demands Loghain's gentling. Elaine seeks Sheriam's help for Egwene, who feels overwhelmed but determined to prove her leadership as Amyrlin. In Chapter 38, Mat and his group traverse a hot forest in Altara, approaching Saladar. Tensions rise as Avienda feels uneasy around Ulver. Vanine, a scout, informs them of warders and Aes Sedai nearby, revealing their numerical disadvantage. Mat decides to prepare for a potential attack. Upon reaching Saladar, he encounters an Aes Sedai who leads him to the Amyrlin seat. Inside, Mat confronts Egwene, Nynaeve, and Elaine, warning them against using the One Power on him. He insists on taking Elaine back to Kemlin and suggests Egwene create a gateway for the group to escape before an impending confrontation occurs. In Chapter 39, Egwene observes Mat's stressed demeanor and considers the risks of her position as Amyrlin. Mat warns her of potential danger, suggesting they escape together. but Egwene insists he follows Rand's orders. Tensions rise when Nynaeve confronts Mat. The women discuss controlling Mat and his army, weighing their options to ensure safety while resisting Rand's commands. Sheriam enters, and Egwene conveys that Rand wants their allegiance. They strategize about moving the army and consider traveling to Ibudar, but Sheriam warns it could provoke conflict. Ultimately, they realize they may need to leave Saladar sooner than expected. In Chapter 40, Mat seeks Tom's help to convince the Aes Sedai to change their plans, fearing for Elaine and Nynaeve's safety in Saladar. Tom informs Mat that Elaine and Nynaeve will soon leave for Ebudar. Meanwhile, Elaine learns of gossip about Mat's arrival and rushes to find Avienda, who is being treated suspiciously by the Aes Sedai. Elaine and Avienda confront their feelings for Rand, discussing the possibility of sharing him and the complexities of their relationships. They agree to get to know each other better, while Elaine contemplates Min's involvement and their impending journeys. In Chapter 41, Min arrives in Kemlin and confidently approaches the royal palace, determined to see Rand al'Thor. Inside, they share a warm reunion where Min delivers a letter from Elaine, revealing complex feelings among them. They discuss the dangers of love, with Rand expressing concern for the safety of those he cares about. Rand instructs Min to tell the Aes Sedai to approach him in groups of 3 and not to channel around him without permission. Meanwhile, Melaine informs Rand that Egwene has left for Saladar, where a contentious Aes Sedai may offer support. Min reveals her viewings and the possibility of twins, leading to a bond between her and Melaine. In Chapter 42, Rand invites Min to the farm, a school for men seeking amnesty, but she declines due to her unease about men who can channel. Upon arriving, Rand finds the farm transformed, with students practicing channeling and combat. He addresses them, announcing the rebel Aes Sedai and naming them Ashaman, but they remain silent. Rand confronts Time about the threat posed by Red Aes Sedai nearby and insists they cannot harm the students. Time expresses concern for Rand's sanity, and Rand resolves to protect the men at all costs while contemplating his leadership and the looming dangers. In Chapter 43, Marana travels to the Crown of Roses with Min and 2 Aes Sedai, Seonid and Masuri. She reflects on a failed treaty from her past while feeling uneasy about the current political situation involving Rand al'Thor. Min's attraction to al'Thor raises concerns about trust, especially after he learned of Saladar. Arriving at the inn, they discuss Rand's recent actions, including new restrictions placed on Aes Sedai. Alana, feeling guilty, expresses hope of winning Rand's acceptance, while Marana outlines a plan to approach nobles in Kemlin to build alliances, keeping the situation delicate and strategic. In Chapter 44, Mat learns that all inns in Saladar are controlled by Aes Sedai. He secures lodging for himself and the band, asserting their independence by hanging banners outside the stable. Mat enjoys local festivities, but is wary of Aes Sedai motives and meets enigmatic women, including Halima. He receives a summons to meet Egwene, who offers him a choice: help her or return home. Mat's irritation grows as he navigates tensions with Elaine and Nynaeve. Eventually, Elaine opens a gateway to Ebudar, and Mat hopes for a swift return before trouble arises. In Chapter 45, Vilnar leads a patrol in Kemlin and notices a Saldean woman raising his concerns. Perrin and Fali approach the city gate, where they learn about noble entry restrictions. They are escorted to Rand, who greets them joyfully. Rand reveals his growing burden, juggling numerous threats, including a rebellion and the division among Aes Sedai. He shares his desire for Elaine's arrival and tasks Perrin with going to Tyr, which Perrin refuses, citing his need to talk to someone in Kemlin. The chapter ends with Rand emphasizing the importance of keeping his plans secret, signaling a shift in his character. In Chapter 46, Perrin meets Davram Bashere, Fael's father, who questions Perrin's ability to care for her. Despite the tension, Perrin asserts his love for Fael, earning Bashere's tentative respect. Meanwhile, Demira Arif survives an assassination attempt, aided by her warders Stivan and Aes Sedai Berenicia and Marana. They discover the attack is part of a larger trap involving Ael and a warning regarding a looming threat. The Aes Sedai debate how to handle Rand, realizing they must make him respect them without ruining their plans. Demira suggests they avoid the palace for several days to make Rand uneasy. In Chapter 47, Mat and 6 women, including 4 Aes Sedai, travel to Ebudar, where tensions rise due to food shortages and authority struggles. Elaine requests Matt's terangrial, but he refuses, growing frustrated with her interference. As they continue on the road, Matt senses increasing tension among the women. Upon reaching Abu Dar, Matt is struck by the city's beauty and complexity, filled with white buildings, canals, and squares. He decides to secure accommodations for his men at an inn while navigating the dynamics with the Ais Sedai, particularly Elaine, whose guidance he finds overbearing. In Chapter 48, Nynaeve and Elaine feel frustrated by their treatment from Ais Sedai Merilil at Terrasen Palace. Elaine proposes they blend in by finding local clothing for their search for the terangrial. Queen Tylan summons them, questioning their status and intentions. Nynaeve asserts her identity as an Ais Sedai, and Tylan expresses her desire for her son Beslan to inherit the throne. Elaine reveals their mission to find a bowl that can control weather. Tylan warns them about the dangers of the Rahad and suggests sending older Ais Sedai for the search, but Elaine remains confident in their abilities. In Chapter 49, Rand, feeling tense after Min's prediction about Tear, discusses guard needs at the Waygates with Perrin when Min alerts them to 7 approaching Ais Sedai. He readies himself, asserting his authority as the Dragon Reborn during their confrontation in the Grand Hall. The Ais Sedai, led by Demira, declare their restrictions lifted, but Rand rejects their demands. Meanwhile, Perrin and Fail prepare to leave for Curian, joined by several others. Rand sends urgent letters to Taim and Marana, warning them of the Ais Sedai's movements. Alana, unaware of the chaos, struggles with her bond to Rand, leading to uncertainty within the Ais Sedai delegation. In Chapter 50, Rand recuperates in the Sun Palace, attended by Min and Sulin. He declines visits from Coirin due to feeling unwell and wary of Ais Sedai. Min's forewarnings about Noble's trouble Rand, who worries for her safety amidst political tensions. Meanwhile, Perrin struggles with Fail's jealousy and Beryllin's flirtation. After a series of awkward encounters with Berylin, Perrin tries to distance himself but finds her constantly pursuing him. He decides to seek Loyal's company and hunt instead of confronting the situation with Fail. Rand plans to meet with Coirin again, contemplating alliances as he prepares to face Samael. In Chapter 51, Rand struggles with Sulin as she helps him dress, reminding him to be respectful to the Ais Sedai. Rand is anxious for Min to join him for an audience with Coirin and her companions. He orders Sulin to fetch Min, and she leaves with a promise. As the Ais Sedai arrive, Rand feels a sudden shield preventing him from accessing the One Power, realizing he's trapped by 13 Ais Sedai, including members of the Red Aja. Rand's attempts to break the shield fail. While outside, Sorelia senses trouble as both Rand and Min have gone missing, raising her suspicions. In Chapter 52, Matt grows frustrated over Elaine, Birgit, and Nynaeve's disappearance and organizes a search for them. Meanwhile, Elaine and Birgitta, disguised as locals, navigate the Rahad in search of the bowl. They witness a violent scene and become intrigued by Azra, a Damani Wilder. Matt and Nalacian cross paths with them, but Elaine's focus remains on finding the bowl. In a different setting, Egwene speaks with Logain, who expresses frustration over his uncertain fate. She reassures him of her protection and prepares for the challenges of leading the Ais Sedai, aware of the mounting political tensions. In Chapter 53, Perrin struggles through the Feast of Lights in Curian, missing Rand, who has been absent for 6 days. Dobrain informs him of 2 murdered lords, suspecting Colivera's involvement to bolster her claim to the Sun Throne. He mentions Berylane has evidence against her. Despite the chaos, Perrin resolves to rescue Rand, contemplating the potential costs. Meanwhile, Rand endures brutal punishment from the Ais Sedai, particularly Arian, as he resolves not to break under the torture. He begins to devise a plan for escape, sensing a critical opportunity to exploit the situation surrounding his captors. In Chapter 54, during the Feast of Lights in Carrion-Perrin, Gaul, and Loyal cross the Alguenya River with a ferryman. They meet Javian Nurel and Dobrain, who join their mission to rescue Rand from the Ais Sedai. Perrin connects with Wolves for intelligence and learns they are tracking the Ais Sedai. Tensions rise between the Aiel and Carinen as they travel, but Perrin eventually sees a familiar column of banners. When he informs the Ais Sedai of Rand's captivity, they express disbelief. Despite their concerns, Perrin insists on stopping the Ais Sedai from taking Rand to Tar Valon. In Chapter 55, Gowen leads a column towards Dumai's Wells, contemplating the landscape while grappling with his feelings for Egwene and Min. He receives alarming news from Benji about thousands of Ael approaching. Gawain insists on halting the column to address the threat, countering Galena's dismissal of the danger. Meanwhile, Rand suffers in a chest, enduring torture and contemplating his imprisonment, determined to escape. Perrin observes a massive battle between Aes Sedai and the Shido, realizing the urgency to rescue Rand. As chaos unfolds, Perrin and his companions charge into the fray, driven to reach Rand amidst the carnage. Epilogue. Phalion receives a note revealing that Elaine and Nynaeve have evaded her, frustrating her search for Angreal. Her thoughts turn to capturing them to appease Moghedien. Meanwhile, Herod Fell is brutally murdered by a golem, and Idrian faints upon discovering his body. A writer speculates on the return of the Seanchan and a looming invasion. Moghedien is freed from the Autumn by Arangur, who summons her to Sheol Gul. Egwene discovers that Moghedien has escaped and suspects a male channeler helped her. Demandred in Sheol Gul seeks validation from the Great Lord.